Hello, I'm Sherman Blackwell, and welcome to this week's program presented by Singing River Mental Health. Thank you for joining me today. Got a very special guest on the program today. Rosie Morton is here, and she is one of our leading therapists, and she has been with Singing River for 7 years now.
That's right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you. It's been a while since you've been on the program, and always good to be around Rosie. And one of the reasons I wanted her to be on the program today, and as we do from time to time, is to try to introduce our staff and the people that work at Singing River Mental Health to the community, so there's some familiarity, something that's known. And Rosie, as I mentioned, has been here since for 7 years now. Mm-hmm. And how did you get into this kind of work?
Let's see, I have to make this a short story because it really is long. I started out, I worked for 14 years for lawyers, and I went back to school and got a degree. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was very well educated. And I went to work at a hospital in Mobile. And I made friends with one of the sisters there, and through a number of our activities, we did several activities for the community and other jobs I had there. The sister convinced me to go to school, get my master's degree. She said I was a natural for working with people like this.
Absolutely.
And she gave me a lot of encouragement, and I made it.
So here you are.
I'm here.
Good, and she was exactly right. I think it's Ben Franklin that said, find your grain and then follow it. And so it's a wonderful thing if and your personality is certainly fitted for what you do, because I mean, in the type of work that we do, it's very important to be engaging and to have a particular, a integrity about that comes through, because many people, I mean, when people come to talk, not just people with severe mental illness, but people that we have a lot of EAP programs, people that have marital problems, work-related, family problems.
That's right.
When you're talking about someone opening up to you, that doesn't just happen on the first bounce, does it?
No, we do have to develop a rapport, and we do that by just unconditional positive regard. We don't judge, we just let the person tell the story, and we get to know each other, and after a while a therapeutic relationship develops where that person trusts us, and we can communicate our thoughts about what they tell us. And we don't really give advice, we give options, maybe, coping skills.
Good.
Teach.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the person takes what they need from that.
Yeah, there are a lot of different philosophies and theories about, as we've discussed briefly, about, treatment, how do you proceed, therapeutic dynamics. To me, one of the most important things, and I just heard you say that, is when you start, people sometimes looking for you to tell them the answer. Well, and I used to tell, if I have to tell you the answer, then I'll have to tell it to you again. But you're talking about giving them options, giving them choices, and empowering them to make that decision.
That's right.
And many times, decisions, I like to think 90% of all the decisions that we make can be undone.
That's
There are
right.
certain things, so sometimes it's a trial and error. And so many people are looking for a silver bullet when they come in, but it's a process. A person did not get in a particular state overnight, and it's rare that they spontaneously remit.
That's right.
Over.
And sometimes just helping people realize that some of their choices may have been harmful in a way where they really discover it on their own, and they can change their behavior. And we give them options.
Yeah.
It's like with anger management. When you know that you've been blowing up every time your family gets together, you've been having a big outburst about something somebody says, then you know when you go to that family function that you need to just sit back and, take a deep breath, count to 10. You know it's going to happen. Just let it go ahead and happen.
Right.
And you don't want to continue the same bad behavior that's happened all your life.
The definition of insanity, huh?
Right.
When you keep doing the same thing over and over again, which is a legal term, that and expecting different results.
That's
it's not
right.
going to happen. You are. I know that I know you have some interest and have been someone who's been involved in people with Alzheimer's. You've been to conventions and things like that. Tell us about the Active Life group.
That's my group that meets every Thursday, and we really don't have anybody in there with Alzheimer's now, but we could with beginning Alzheimer's, because they respond very well to laughter, fun, just like I mentioned before, unconditional positive regard. We started the group because some people have been so isolated. They may not have much family, they may not have many things to do, not any involvement in the community. And so rather than be isolated all week, they come to our group once a week. Is all we have it right now, on Thursdays from 1 to 3. And we try to have it separated into sections. Like the first section, they'll tell me some things that have gone on during the week, and some people may have an issue that they need to tell the group about, or people don't have to talk if they don't want to, but most everybody does eventually.
Wow.
And it's kind of like a get to know you when the new person comes, and then we'll talk about an educational component. Last week we talked some about self-esteem. We have ways to improve your self-esteem, and anger, aging issues, aging successfully. The first thing in aging successfully is taking care of your health, of course. We talk about that, and we have a little guideline that we go by, and I hand it out. It's got a picture of a caterpillar that turns into a beautiful butterfly. So when you age successfully, you can become the beautiful butterfly, and you can be free of a lot of the regrets and past things that had hurt you.
Yeah, bitterness is too big a burden to bear.
That's right.
It really is. There's some, I've always been a proponent, I think there's an advantage to, I mean, there's certain times when one-on-one individual therapies are obviously the choice, but when you get to a place when there's a group setting, because that group begins to interact and the dynamic, and I facilitated groups before, and I thought there was so much wisdom and insight coming from people. I thought, I didn't know that.
Yes, they will. I learn from my individuals every day. I always learn something new, and they are very good. I tell them, this is your group. If you have a problem with somebody in the group, tell them about it. We learn to communicate effectively that way, and we teach them to use I feel. Instead of saying, you did this wrong, they'll say, I feel nervous when you do such and such. Use the feelings. And they learn, that's the way that they can learn to communicate with their families and friends outside of group.
Outside of group. Communication is the bottom line, I think, when we learn, you know, we find that you have to be on the same page, obviously, to do that. But there's so much. I mean, in just general population, there's so much, how important it is to communicate. So that becomes even more acute when you're dealing with personal issues.
That's right.
Along those lines. And so and there are a lot of ways to reinforce that.
And I think communication is the key to problems in the workplace, in the community, and of course with neighbors. You know how many times you've heard about neighbor arguments, and it could have just been solved with a good communication. And it's so important in our everyday lives.
And many times that ends up being because of misunderstanding, too. But I think that we talked a little bit earlier about this, too. You know, even people with chronic mental illness, you can begin to think about how you feel. I can You know, since you mentioned that, I can think about how I feel, which here again, you know, differentiates humans from the animal kingdom in the neo-mammalian brain, the ability to think about things and to process things and not have a herd mentality. I know when I'm getting a cold, I feel that, and I can see that coming on. And I believe that, you know, even though we have good medicines, great doctors, good nurses, and all throughout the community, all those things do for people that have a mental illness is going to bring them to a balance. They still have to deal with problems.
That's right. And they can tell when something is irritating them. Their heart might start to race a little bit. They might start feeling agitated. They know when they're feeling something, and they can find an alternate way to deal with those feelings. They can always get up and walk outside, take a little walk, and take a deep breath. And we do have anger management group on Mondays that's very effective in helping people recognize their triggers to anger and recognize that they can change it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't have to live your life the same way.
Change, exactly right, can be good. And instead of letting history in the past drive things, you can look at it, can't live in it, but it can help be the catalyst for change.
That's right.
I think. My guest today is Rosie Morton. She is a clinician at Singing River Mental Health, and she has been doing an excellent job for us for a number of years now. She is a person that I wanted to reintroduce you to. She is available. We do have EAPs, and Rosie has spoke in the community some and done some things like that, and she would be available if you have any inquiries about something that was said on this program or something about something that she said about the group or group information. Please give us a call. And while we're here, we want to remind you, of course, of the number that you see on the screen there. It is available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. One of the primary reasons we use this type of media is to get that word out. I know it's redundant, I know it's, but it is consistent, and we think it's very important because we think that a community that is moving towards assuaging the stigma of mental health and becoming mentally healthier through education, through understanding, through all of the avenues is certainly a better community. And this is Sherman Blackwell, and we'll be right back after these messages. Hello, this is Sherman Blackwell, and thank you for joining us today for the second half of this program. My guest today is the A&D Director for Singing River Mental Health. That is Dr. Greg Fox. And Dr. Fox, in the first half of the program, we were talking about some of the particular programs that were happening at Singing River. And a number of, I know immediately after Katrina, there was a spike in substance abuse use in what they call the 6 coastal counties. And we get a lot of different referrals. How do we, how do we get our referrals for substance abuse program?
Well, I'm hoping this is a big way right here, you know, because we really, we get them from lawyers, and we get them from judges, probation officers, but we also, people are finding out by word of mouth, and I think we're now on the internet, and they can look us up.
Right.
We don't really care how anybody gets to us, any of our programs. We just want to be available, and we know people that have substance abuse problems don't wake up in the morning and say, I think I want to go to treatment. Right. It's a family disease, and a lot of the family members will encourage and insist that their family members go into treatment because this disease destroys families. It destroys really just about anything that touches the addict's life. And we just want to give them a chance to be able to turn their life around.
When you say it is a family disease, do you mean it has a systemic stripe to it? It comes down through like green eyes would, or brown eyes, or is that how it happens, or is that a part of the way it happens?
Well, alcoholism has been found to be genetic, and it increases your risk from being alcoholic if you have it in your family history from 15% to 65%. It hasn't been proven yet with drug addiction, but I think what I've seen, firsthand, it is being passed down generational, probably genetically, but definitely with the environmental influence on it. Yeah, it's becoming just grandparents and parents and kids doing them together. And
yeah, right.
And we're seeing this, with the mental health issues as well that are involved. If you have bipolar disease, your chance of becoming an addict are also a lot higher.
Okay. Hence the co-occurring or dual diagnosis that you were talking about earlier.
Right. And co-occurring disorder is the new term for dual diagnosis, and that is you have two diagnoses. One is substance abuse or alcohol abuse or dependence, and the other is a mental health issue, which would be either schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, generalized depression, anxiety disorders, a whole range of different diagnoses. And if you put the two together, you have a really, really destructive course. And a lot of people with depression have a very tough time staying off the chemicals. They're trying to self-medicate themselves to feel better. Yeah.
Become numb. And and we're talking about alcohol, but it also includes, of course, medication, medicines, those kinds of things. And not necessarily, what you alluded to earlier, not necessarily just illegal drugs like, going out to smoking crack with somebody, but in the medicine cabinet, huh? I mean, that's readily available. Does that start that way?
Yeah, it's really changed a lot over the last 10, 15 years. The opiates, the Loratab, the OxyContin, going to doctors to get prescriptions for medications that are being abused. And we see a range from methamphetamine, crack cocaine, heroin, to the opiates and the benzos like Xanax and Valium. We're seeing abuse really all along the gamut.
Dr. Fox, do you think, when you talk about, I guess people talk about drugs of choice, but I know running rampant not only in our area but in a lot of areas all over the nation, you talk about meth and how that is so addictive, and as opposed to we'll say like Loratab, which may be addictive too. What is it? Just accessibility for the person that, or is it when you say drug of choice? What does that come to mean?
The drug of choice is really the primary drug that the individual uses to take care of his pleasure, to solve his problems, to take care of his issues, and it really depends on the person. I think that anybody that's an addict, they can be addicted, and their drug of choice can be cocaine, and 10 years later it could be opiates. Okay. And 10 years later it could be heroin. I mean, it just really cross addictions. It really doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter.
Just the course of recovery is much different. With opiates, we're seeing a lot of depression. It's just the recovery process is really different for the individual and their drug of choice.
Okay. So
but for the most part, it's the same as well. It's abstinence.
Gotcha. And the goal, of course, that is what we do when we talk about recovery. We're talking about a little bit about a lot about after the fact, and people, for whatever reason, come to treatment when they come to treatment. And you haven't had a lot to do with this yet, but how important a role is for people to be in the community, like therapists, like our prevention program, to talk about and to try to interdict with children, and how effective is that process?
Well, I think preventative care here is very important, and I know we have a prevention specialist that goes to our schools, the elementary schools, and has a program with the young kids. I think it's extremely important. I think if you ignore the topic, and think it's just going to, go away. It's not going to. And apparently what we're finding out is that as the kids are getting exposed to drugs and alcohol at a much, much earlier age. And so I think preventative measures are extremely important.
Is that much more critical? I certainly agree, and particularly when we see the alarming rate that it's in school systems and, like you said, in the families, in the schools, and school is a great opportunity, a great place to be able to capture students, to give them the information, to talk to them, and I do think that I think children are very able to shape and mold and impact their thinking process, their emotive process, and so that's critical.
I think it's extremely critical because a lot of these kids are going home to families that drugs are widely used, and they don't really have a place where they can really trust. So it's really going to be a power struggle between what they see at home and what they see at school. So I think that it's extremely important for them to be exposed to people that they can trust, that are trying to help them and educate them on this. I think it's very important.
And so the importance of prevention is critical. And I know that you have worked very hard, very diligent, and we talked a little bit about this at the top of the show, but I want to go back to the Stevens Center, our residential program. What happens in the Stevens Center, regardless of how a person gets in there? What takes place in the 42 days that an individual is there?
It's a 42-day inpatient treatment, and when they first come in, they meet with their therapist and they go over a treatment plan, and that's individualized for that specific individual. And then they're given a list of assignments to do, which they have 42 days to do. They do a chemical history, they do a life story, females do a garden of life, and they go through steps 1, 2, and 3. We also do a MMPI, personality inventory test, that a clinical psychologist comes in and reads with them, in front of them, with all 3 therapists to better aid us in their treatment. There's group therapy once a day, and they have lectures twice a day. So basically we want them to kind of dry out. We want to educate them on the disease that they have. We want to break them of some of their distorted thinking, their rationalizing and their justifying and their minimizing, which is all part of the denial of the disease. It's a little intense, but it's not too intense, because we get into some of their family of origin issues, and we just try to kind of introduce them, because recovery is going to be a lifelong process. If you do too much right at the beginning, it'll kind of scare them off. But we also educate the families as well about enabling and how that can be extremely detrimental and life-threatening to the addict.
Very, very excellent point. So we're talking about, fundamentally, we're talking about insight, and we're talking about, of course, I guess there are different levels. People come in at different stages as far as their preparedness to change, for a paradigm shift in their life, and some of that may be very desperate, and some of it may be not so desperate.
One thing I want to add is I'm real proud of what we're doing at the Stevens Center. I think we have a top-notch staff that is extremely devoted. I want to mention them because they do an incredibly wonderful job. Without them, we couldn't get along. And I think we're doing some really good work there, and I encourage that if you have a family member that needs some help or know of somebody, please contact us. Our number at the Stevens Center is 228-769-1280.
1280, that's good. And Dr. Fox will be glad to talk to you, one of his staff members. In fact, we'd be glad to. Of course, we're already in the prevention sense going into the community, but we also work with employee assistance programs, coming to your place of business, to schools, to civic organizations, just to talk about the programs that are readily available. And it's always good to have that information. Somebody, whether it may not be in their immediate family, knows somebody who's having issues with their children, grandchildren. Substance abuse issues, drug issues, alcoholism is something that has to be pursued. It's not going to spontaneously remit.
Right.
It's not going to go away just to ignore it. So, well, Dr. Fox, thank you for being here today. It's been good. You'll have to come back pretty soon.
Appreciate you having me.
On a regular basis, and let's update and see what's going on with substance abuse issues, not only here, but across the state, because information is critical to get into the community and let them know about the availability. We're not saying we're the only place that you can get service, and we certainly are one, and we want to be sure that you get educated, get information about anything that you have, any inquiries regarding substance abuse and alcoholism. So this program's gone by too fast. We'll have to next time or two, we'll have to take a specific topic, and we can talk about the kinds of things that are happening and things that are happening here locally, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. My guest today has been Dr. Greg Fox, the A&D Director for the Singing River Services, and he's been the Director at the Stevens Center, and now has been promoted to the A&D Director. So thanks for being here, Dr. Fox.
Sure.
Look forward to seeing you again next week at the same time.